So as I said on the video on the Sunday, I actually have an idea for a competitive horde mode that could be implemented into Destiny 2. And at the same time, this will sunset Gambit, so whether that's a good thing or a bad thing to you, this might be a good alternative to Gambit. But of course, you're not here to hear me ramble, so I'm just going to go straight into how I would set this up. So the way this competitive horde mode is going to work is that there are going to be 5 waves, and the goal is very simple. You need to be the fire team to beat them first. Each wave will have an escalated number of adds, with the final wave being the boss wave, and it is literally just kill the boss first. So I'm going to start by describing what it's actually going to be like. So with Gambit being sunset, we're actually going to be kind of using some ideas from Gambit as well, because whilst I don't like Gambit as a rule of thumb, some of the ideas in it are actually quite good for this horde mode. So I'm going to talk about the waves first, and I'm just doing this theoretical because I want to try and keep it short enough for you to enjoy a game, but not have to commit so much time into it that you get bored doing it. And understandably, this is still quite difficult to do, because if it's a horde mode, you kind of need a lot of adds to do it. So this is how I've split it out. The first wave that you're going to do is going to have 80 adds, 70 of which are going to be red bars and 10 mages. Wave number 2 will have 100 adds, which is going to be 80 red bars and 20 mages. Wave 3 will be 130 adds, which is 100 red bars and 30 mages. But there is something extra with this as well. There will be 5 above your power level. Yes, you heard me right. This game mode is going to be power capped, because that is how you can introduce a good amount of challenge whilst not making it unbearable to do. But moving on to Wave 4, there will be 160 adds with 120 red bars and 40 mages. And Wave 5 will be the boss wave, which won't end until the boss is defeated by one of the fire teams. And in these boss waves, there's going to be a consistent wave of adds coming at you, so it's going to be 3 groups of 8 red bars and 2 mages in each pack. But not only that, the boss wave is plus 10 your power level, so the boss and also all the adds spawning in this stage are plus 10. But let's talk about the bosses, because there's something I want to do differently compared to what Gambit's already doing. And instead of getting some taken enemy, which, yes, they are quite cool for the fact that it's Gambit and it's something different, I would actually consider using the raid bosses, but in nightmare form, in order to achieve something here. And yes, you could say I'm reusing assets in some way, because I am technically just taking the raid bosses and utilizing them for something else. But this plays into the story behind the game mode, and also it does give the players a chance to experience the raid bosses if they can't get a raid team together. Obviously, they won't have their full wealth of abilities available, like there's not going to be a wipe mechanic for these, because it's going to be ridiculous having a horde mode that they have a wipe mechanic on. But something I will let them have is their basic firing mode. So let's say Sanix for the Deep Stone Crypt, for example, he's got a cannon that's always firing at you, but then he also has another attack which is like an orbital strike kind of thing. I would also let him have that as well. Even talking about a current raid boss like Nezarec, I would actually have Nezarec running around normally using his scythe as his primary attack, and then he'd be able to fire off purple arcs as well. But because obviously I'm talking about nightmares, I would have to involve Erismorn into this game mode as well. So whilst I'm not getting rid of Drifter, and I would love to have him as the quote-unquote games master, Erismorn will be there to be taking down the nightmares. You can kind of think of it like they're teaming up in a way to take down nightmares that are invading the system. So this is a good story point, because the Leviathan is still up in the sky as of this moment, so I don't see why this isn't a feasible thing. And of course, the moon is still haunted, so that is also another reason why this kind of works. But with every horde mode, there needs to be a little bit extra. You don't just want numerous adds running at you and just killing them all the time. There needs to be a bit of twists and turns into it. And this is where you can use your score. So score is generated through numerous activities throughout Destiny, but in the competitive horde mode, you can actually spend your score to get different things. Obviously, your total score will be calculated and shown at the end, but at the same time, your score will be usable, and there will be a little like dash in the corner or something telling you how much score that you've used out of your total amount. And the biobles are very simple at the minute, because I've literally just jotted down a few that would make sense in this game mode. So going from the top, we have units, and this starts with Elixir Raiders, which are just 3 basic Elixirs, basically the ones with the spears that we've seen through Season of the Plunder. And if you use 1,000 score, you can spawn 3 of these. The next unit you could buy is an Elixir Captain, which you've seen in numerous parts of the campaign, and also in numerous activities as well. You can spawn 1 of them for 3,000 score. The next ones you can get are Cabal Centurions for 2,000 score, and that's because they're pretty much in the city anyway. It makes a lot of sense to actually incorporate them into this, and a part of Kyle's army. Why wouldn't they want to be involved? And the last unit I've got is Cabal Turrets, because we've seen them already when it comes to Iron Banner. Like, I think the game mode was Fortress, if I remember right. When the point spawns in that you need to capture, it's accompanied by 3 Cabal turrets. There's no reason why you couldn't incorporate it into this game mode, but have them friendly to the fire teams that spawn them. And for 1,500 score, you could have 2 of these, but the thing is, there is going to be limited spawns for these, because I get the feeling that just spawning hundreds of Cabal turrets is going to be a little bit overpowered. So I don't know, maybe a maximum cap of 4, if not 6, so just certain spots around the map that they can go, and when they get destroyed, you can replenish them as you need. But that's not all, because alongside of being able to spawn in units that can help you with the waves, I want to give you guys the chance to have buffs as well. So the first buff we have is the Restoration Pool for 10,000 score. And the way this is going to work is it's going to be a circle plate that sits at the back of the map, but what's going to happen is as soon as you step into the pool, it will activate restoration for 30 seconds. And of course, this is restoration times 1 because having times 2 would be overpowered as hell. And having it all the time would also be overpowered, so 30 seconds is a very good middle point to have. But with buffs like this, they will last for 2 waves, so after 2 waves, you'll have to buy the restoration pool again in order to keep it active. Moving on to the second buff though, we have the overshield generator, which is again for 10,000 score. It will effectively overcharge your shield for 30 seconds or until it is broken. So literally how the restoration pool works, you just run over to the generator, it will charge up your overshield, then you can run out into combat and you've got a full overshield for 30 seconds or until it is broken. And the third and final buff machine is something called the Empowerer, or that's the working name I've given it anyway. And the way this works is there are 3 types of damage buffs that you can get. So you have the minor damage buff for 15% extra damage, which is 5,000 score. You have the moderate damage buff for 20%, which is 10,000 score. And then you have the major damage buff for 25%, which is 15,000 score. And I know what you're thinking, oh, I can just stack these then. No, you cannot stack these. Only one buff can be applied in the Empowerer at any one time. And this is where your decisions are really going to matter, because if you chuck in the minor damage buff, for example, it's going to be active for 2 waves. So for 2 waves, you're not going to be able to put in the moderate damage buff or the major damage buff either. But the good thing about the Empowerer is I am making this like all the time. So as soon as it's activated in the Empowerer, the Guardians on the fire team that have that, they will have it throughout the entire map for the entire wave. Because honestly, I think running backwards and forwards to get a weapon damage buff is a bit daft, so I don't think it's a good idea to have it. But I've been throwing out all these numbers about score. I think it's about time I actually told you what rewards you with the scores. So red bar enemies will give you 100 score each, so just off wave 1 alone, there's 70 red bar enemies. That means you can get up to 7,000 score off red bars. But I'm also pricing mages at 300 score each, so on just wave 1 alone, there are 10 mages. You would get 3,000 score for the mages. That basically means coupled together you can get 10,000 score off the first wave alone. And to translate that into buffs or units that you can buy, you could effectively buy one of every unit that is on the list, or you could buy one buff. Or maybe you'd like to combine it as well and get a minor damage buff and then some compelled centurions and some turrets. That could also work. But this is where strategy has to start playing a part into it, because your score is going to be based on the individuals that get the kills, which basically means you could have one Guardian in the first wave get 7,000 total score, and they get to spend it because it's their score that they've earned. And the whole reason I'm doing it like that is so you can't just get every single buff straight off the bat and just completely wipe out the whole system. It makes you think about what you're spending your score on and how it's going to benefit your team as a whole. Like for example, if there was a Guardian that got the 7,000 score in the previous wave, then do they go for a minor damage buff for 2 waves off wave 1? Or do they think about saving it to get the major damage buff later down the line? There's all these decisions that you take into account when you're playing this game, and obviously this is matchmaking that I want to be in the game mode, so you wouldn't have to go in with a fire team of 4, you would just literally group up like you would in normal Gambit. But there is one other thing I will be taking from Gambit, and that is the invasion mechanic. Because I'm going to be honest, the invasion mechanic is still a really good idea, and it's a perfect way to sabotage the enemy team, even when you're doing a horde mode. And for this I made up a completely new system which is called the Dimensional Splitter, and this effectively is just the invasion but with escalating tiers that will make it easier or harder to do the invasion. So for example, the first tier of invasion will cost you 2,500 score, which will just basically drop you in and only an overshield, and it's down to you to kill the Guardians from that point. Invasion Tier 2 is effectively like the current Gambit invasion that we have, where it's going to cost you 5,000 score, but you'll be invading with an overshield and you'll be able to see the player through walls like you do with regular Gambit. And then we have Invasion Tier 3, which will cost 7,500 score, but this is going to be a bit different because it's also going to drop you in with 20% increased damage output. So like I said, with each escalating tier, it becomes easier to hunt down enemies with it. And you might be thinking, that is a lot of score to be spending on an invasion. Why would I want to do that? That's a very good question, and that's because when you invade, you have 30 seconds of invasion time no matter what. So even if you wipe the entire enemy team, you will stay in that realm until your 30 seconds are up. Obviously, if you die, different story, you'll come back as soon as you can. But the reason you're going over there is because each Guardian kill that you can get whilst you're an invader will give you 2,500 score. So considering the fact that you can go in with an invasion tier 1 which costs you 2,500 score and then come back with 10,000 or more score, it definitely makes it very worth it to invade. But of course there's a catch with this. I can't have people invading all the time because then it's just going to be an endless war between Guardians, and at that point it's just the Crucible. So here's the caveat for using the Dimensional Splitter. So only one invader can go across at a time, much like in regular Gambit, but as soon as the invader gets killed or they get teleported back after 30 seconds, there will then be a 1-minute cooldown timer on that team's Dimensional Splitter. And the way that is designed is so the other team can kind of get their feet and their act back together before you just absolutely throttle them again, because I can imagine there's going to be some people out there who are just insanely good at PvP, and having them invade the same team over and over again to just rip up the score seems a little bit unfair. There's also another caveat to this, because I don't want people abusing this in the first and second waves. You can only have the dimensional splitter on the third wave, which is when things start getting competitive and you can start messing with each other. And also at that point, 24,000 score would have been distributed out, so there is a whole range of options you could have for defenses, which is why it will be a challenge for the invaders to take down Guardians as well. And by chance, if you do take down the invader, you get 1,000 score, so it's a nice little bonus as well if you take down an invader. But the reason why there's such a big difference between the two scores is because for an invader coming in against a team of 4 and a whole wave of ads, that seems a lot harder than you just trying to defend against an invader whilst you've got the defense line already in place. But that is basically the idea in a nutshell, competitive horde mode. So by all means, leave a like down below if you did enjoy it, and also leave a comment down below if you have some kind of ideas for it as well. I'd love to discuss this with people in further depth. But for now, I shall see you all in the next video.